Hello there. Good
Hello.
morning, good night, good afternoon. Whenever
Wherever
you
you
come
are.
across this. And welcome to the Too Busy Being Worthy podcast, where we talk about conscious living and mindfulness. And we share our active journeys in creating a safe emotional home within while doing so living in our most authentic expressions.
Love it.
Now, if this is your first time here, welcome. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. We are so grateful that you have come and decided to watch little of us just share our experiences, give our advice with the knowledge that we have, and just do our best to provide you guys with something that is very potent and of value. And we hope that you just get a lot of joy and fulfillment and leave this podcast feeling a little bit better about your situation in life. My name is Garrett.
And I am Anna.
Welcome.
Welcome. We are so excited that you guys are
We're here.
Hopefully this is not your first time listening. Hopefully you're tuning back in because you have liked our previous work.
Yeah. We're just so cute and quirky and zany. You just had to come back and watch us.
You said you were
Just
like,
so
I love these people.
Right. We love them. We're freaking obsessed.
But we're so excited that you're here today. Our topic today is really going to be talking about, I feel like this is like a hot topic or like a very like, more, and maybe it's just because of the realm I'm in. So maybe let me maybe disclaimer.
She's like, I can relate to this. This is a hot topic in my life.
This is a hot topic,
Okay,
and then I'm like, I think everybody talks about this stuff. But then like, it's also I surround myself with this sort of thing. So I was like,
this is something
not.
that I fully embody.
Yeah.
So I just have this on loop in background. When I'm taking a shower, when I'm walking my dogs, I'm just listening to stuff about this. I'll be like, yeah, I got to implement this in my life.
And then I'm like, and then I also have to then take a step back and remember, I'm like, oh, I forget that I live in this little bubble.
Yeah.
And I like am around people that, as you can imagine, are like-minded, have similar thought processes as me and are interested in similar things. So I'm like, okay, actually, I have to remember, not everybody thinks or talks like this. So hopefully, I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably are like-minded. So you've probably heard of what we're going to talk about today. I was like, and it's a good topic and a goodie. If you haven't listened to anything like this, hopefully you get to learn something new and take something fun with you today of like just understanding yourself a little bit more, like being authentic to who you are, to your core. And our main topic today is going to be really talking about setting boundaries.
Yes. Drawing those hard lines.
Let that sink in.
Yes, and just making sure that you do what you need to do in order to protect yourself and feel of value in all of your relationships in life, but also just allow yourself to grow and be free, which boundaries are necessary for you in order to go on that journey.
I love the way you said that. That was so nice. But like, yeah, it's creating value, not only like for who you are, but value also even within your relationships. Because if you're not authentic to who you are and what you want, and it's more like wishy-washy, go with the flow, it's one of those things where it's so easy to get overrun, to just be like, let someone else take the reins. And then before you know it, you're kind of like, who even am I? What is something that's important to me, you know? And it's obviously good to go with the flow with certain things, right? There's personality types where it's like, oh, I could just on a whim go here or there. And again, that's not going to work for every single person in the world. But it's just understanding like, what are the things that will fill you up, bring you joy, versus what are the things that if you're constantly giving and going along with whatever it is, if that's something that's going to be draining you long term, just like understanding that about yourselves and setting those boundaries, being able to say no.
Exactly.
Because it's okay. And there's also nice ways to be like, no, I just can't do this, or I can't.
You can do
that.
It very respectfully. It doesn't have to be like you are, just kind of in somebody's face and like, oh, leave me alone. Like it doesn't have to be all that, y'all.
It's like
at all.
Cute. I'm just kidding. No, it's not that. Like, and I was like,
go home.
And I think boundaries sometimes they can also. I feel like when I first hear it, it almost sounds daunting in a way, or it almost sounds like extreme, where it's like, I know for me, I am a very non-confrontational person. That to my core is not who I am. That's like, but I also think that's how I was like raised, is like to be like, which we'll talk about a little bit more of, like I was raised to be like, go with the flow, don't cause friction. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, of like trying to take up less space. But I think something that as we get older and we understand ourselves, it is okay to take up some of that
Yeah.
space and like setting boundaries. And it doesn't have to be something that's really extreme. I think when I first started hearing about it, the boundaries were like, it was almost like really confrontational, really aggressive. And I was like,
Right.
"Ugh." And to me, I'm like, again, that's like not who I am.
Hmm.
And it's like, it's that middle ground of setting those boundaries, but also doing it in a way where it is still authentic
Yeah.
to yourself, you know?
And also to add on to that, I feel like when you set boundaries with people who benefit from you not having boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
then when you do set those boundaries, it can come off as you building up walls or like being completely closed off and no longer being open or receptive to that person. And like, since your relationship was this one way that was convenient for them, since you want to make some changes, then it's just
Mm-hmm.
like they can take it as an attack almost on their character and
Right.
like, oh, well, I'm just this horrible friend or
Mm-hmm.
horrible parent or whoever you're setting that boundary with.
Yeah.
But just ensuring to yourself and telling yourself that that is not the case and knowing that even if people have those reactions that you're actually making the right decision by setting
Mm-hmm.
those boundaries because like it really is showing you that oh wow, like I don't have space to be me, to express myself, to even discover how it is I want
Mm-hmm.
people to treat me, how I want to be regarded in,
Mm-hmm.
and how I can move forward in other relationships in a healthy way that is serving for me and doesn't cause me a lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
And an experience that I feel like is very relatable to all of us, specifically in our 20 somethings, which this podcast is about giving conscious mindful advice to people in their 20s because we are also in our 20s and actively going
We
through
get
that
it.
journey. So
We
we just
get
want to
it.
help all of y'all out and share how we get through things. But even if you're not in your 20s, just like if this relates to you, then I do feel like everyone can draw a bit of value of this. Um, but specifically, people in their early to mid 20s, I feel like can experience a strong sense of people pleasing tendencies and
Mm-hmm.
wanting to,
You read my mind. That's exactly
yeah,
what I was gonna
right.
say.
Like wanting to go with the flow,
Mm-hmm.
as Anna stated, in order to avoid uncomfortable situations or to just fit in with
Mm-hmm.
people and to not like stand out in society because standing out can be a very uncomfortable experience.
Yeah.
And if you're an empath, like
Mm-hmm.
myself, I do identify as an empath because I just have always been very in tune with outside energies and being able to read people and um, acclimate myself to the environment in order to gauge if it's safe or
Mm-hmm.
not. An experience that you maybe could relate to if you're an empath watching this is taking on the emotional burdens of others and really identifying it as your own and making it very personal and relating it to yourself when in all actuality it was never your responsibility to carry in the
Yeah.
first place. Somebody could be feeling uneasy or disgruntled, and you might have the internal dialogue that says, okay, I see that this person is feeling these things and it's making me feel the same thing. So let me do what I can in order to change environmental circumstances and make them happy so that way I can be happy. And while this is something that can definitely be effective in subduing rising tensions of the situation in the given moment, in the long term, it's going to create this codependent cycle where the person who you are trying to please has grown so accustomed to you meeting all their needs in order for them to feel comfortable, then they're in need of that from you. And you need them to be satisfied in order to feel safe. Now, human beings, we are all very unique, beautiful, and complex creatures. We go through endless ebbs and flows mentally, physically, and emotionally. Due to these fluctuations, we're never going to be happy or jovial all the time. So if you hang your sense of safety on people feeling these things through and through whenever you interact with them, you're never going to be safe. And this could be very challenging to navigate when you are so connected to that sixth sense that you've began to identify with it and view yourself as a fixer. Now, it could be very interesting if we take the chance to challenge ourselves and get curious as to why we feel the need to do this in the first place. It could present itself as the guise of helping others. Now, you truly might believe that this is the case and that you're doing the right thing, so to speak. However, when you dig a little deeper, you can come to discover that there really is a disconnect with yourself. That being grounded in what it is you stand for, your concept on respect and how you like to receive it, being listened to, cared for, having space held for you in order to express your emotions freely, and being shown grace and compassion throughout that process. And when you really come to these realizations, it can show you just how much you really are disconnected with yourself. Also, all the people that you've been trying to people please for all this time can get really comfortable with asking for a lot from you because your default setting has been doing everything in your power to please them and bending over backwards at every turn. And they've been taking from this endless well of generosity. So if you don't set boundaries in order to not only protect yourself, but to discover what it is that you like and how you want people to approach you in life, your well is going to run dry. Having clear, non-negotiable boundaries is going to be a key component in you finding that groundedness within yourself, which can then lead to you expressing yourself freely and unapologetically.
Okay, that was, first of all, beautiful. I really love, I want to go back and emphasize something that you said that just like, really hit for me because I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to that, especially like if you have that tendency to be that people pleaser, to be that empath when you know you identify with those. I think what you said of a lot of times you help people under the guise of like, I'm doing it to help people. Like, you're like, I'm doing it for other people, which obviously has a good intention. It's not a bad or negative thing
at all.
But it's exactly.
But it's a mask.
But exactly, yes, it's exactly what you said. Like, think a little bit deeper into why. You know what I mean? Like, because I think we were talking about this earlier. It's like there's always two sides. Like being an empath does create you a lot of emotional intelligence with people, and it makes you a very good quality friend. But on the flip side of that coin, it's just like you said, that being an empath, that is putting, like, you are feeling what that person is feeling, what they're telling you. You take that on, which as a friend, again, that's beautiful. You want that, again, when you're going through something, you want your friend to then like kind of get upset with you.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean?
And like have that's a form of validation.
Right. Which totally makes sense. Like, I mean, I think even some of my friends, they'll tell me something and I'm like, her, that
right.
bitch. And I don't know her, but I'm like, I immediately hate her. And again, but it is a balancing act of what you said. Like, you need to make sure that you're creating an environment and boundaries with the right type of people that are giving that energy back to you, right? Where it's like, it's okay to be like empathetic with people. That's part of being a human.
Exactly.
Hopefully everybody has some bit of that, even if it's a small bit.
I believe the key to real connection too is being able to empathize with people as well as showing compassion.
But it's also then surrounding yourself with people that are meeting you where you're at. And the reality is some people aren't going to be able to meet you where you're at. And that is also okay. But that's where you need to be able to understand. And that's where I think different like types of friendships come into play. Because some people, like like we were talking about earlier, one person can't be everything for you. You're going to have there's, I think as an adult, especially in your 20s, 30s, I mean, even as, I mean, well into your adult years, you have different types of friendships that end up developing over time. And I think sometimes we all have like childhood friends, maybe that we'll stay in touch with, and people that you have really deep connections because they know your family. They've seen you through so many phases of life. So you can talk about some of the more deeper and more serious things. But you're also going to have people that you met, in your 20s that they don't know your full history. They don't know your full background. And that's also okay. That's nobody's fault. But it's also understanding, like, having the emotional intelligence of knowing where you are in that relationship and how to develop and grow it. Because I know there are certain relationships, which I think are normal, where I'm going to have certain relationships where it's not going to be the deepest connection in the world. Like, this might be like my really fun, energetic friend where, like, we're going to go out, we're going to like have dinner and get drinks, and we're going to have a good time when we go out. But I may not necessarily be close enough with this person to like share some of like the heavier and the more serious stuff of what's going on with me. So it's also understanding those boundaries. And it doesn't mean that fun relationship can't then grow into having a more deeper connection, but it's also having that emotional intelligence of building that bond where it's like, okay, maybe someone's venting to me, sharing all those like heavy things, and the empath in you is like taking all that load on, but then they're not reciprocating that energy. They're not able to fill your cup up the way that you are trying to be for them. And some people are also in times in their life where it is more overwhelming. It is more stressful. They're not able to give that back to you. But like you said, we're a well, right? Eventually, like, we're going to run out. So it's just understanding of like making sure you're not always giving to some people that aren't able to fill your cup up as well. It's right. It's like that give and take there where you just need to kind of understand that. And I think that's what's so hard about being in your 20s, even in your 30s. I mean, I think even in adult relationships, it's hard, like even if you're in your 40s, whatever it is, right? I think it's so important to like just try to figure out the kind of relationship that you're building and formulating with that person. And then also understanding like, you know what? It's okay that this person isn't going to maybe check every single box for what I need. But then also like, if it is a kind of person that you're like, our energies just aren't matching. Like, I feel more drained after like hanging out with you versus I walk away being like, I'm energized. Like, I feel like excited. I feel like we're really like feeding off that same energy, right? So it's like understanding yourself to be like, how am I feeling when I'm leaving these encounters with people? And I'm like, is it serving me, or is it really not serving me the way that I should?
Yeah.
And I think with some of these relationships, it also changes. Like, I think we've all had experience with friends where sometimes we grow apart as we get older. Sometimes we're in just totally different phases of life, and we don't always necessarily understand each other where we're at. Like, I know,
very true.
Right? Like, I know for some people, like when I was even younger in my early 20s, I know some people that got married, they started having kids, they started families, which is beautiful. So awesome.
But it's definitely like a hard left. It's just like, okay, they just went all the way over here. And it's like, yeah, I can't really relate to your life much anymore.
Right.
And then they have certain priorities.
Exactly.
And then things are just going to happen to where, that disconnect happens.
Exactly.
And to your point, just about how everybody isn't going to check every box, I feel like there is a lot of societal stigma around finding people that can relate to you in every aspect in life. But we are all human beings that
dynamic,
are uniquely us. Every single individual has so many varying life experiences that contributes to their identity and the character that they develop. So even if you relate with somebody on many, many, many levels, like somebody who has grown up with you and seen you in all of your life phases, still, even you and that person have had different experiences to where you are not going to relate on every single thing. So the perfect, unique concoction that is you just isn't going to fit with one person who is perfectly matched and aligned in that way. So yes, it is natural that every single person that you come across is going to check certain boxes, but they are not going to check every box because they are not you at the end of the day.
Exactly. Like, could not have said it better. Because we know, like, as we get older, relationships change. Like, again, people, start getting in serious relationships, or they get married, or they start having kids. And then, like you said, their priorities are going to change. And sometimes your priorities are different. You know what I mean? For a lot of people that do have kids early on, that's awesome. Like, when you know what you want, that's what you should go for. That's so important. And I will say, it doesn't mean that you're not going to still stay close with those people, right? But it also just means that you're at different phases and you might not be able to relate to the things that you were bonding over before.
Exactly.
Because now their priorities, or even yours have now changed and it's shifted to this different phase of your life. And sometimes those are just different phases. And that's totally normal. And so I think as adults, it's okay to know that, like, those relationships start to change, they start to adapt, but then understanding of, like, being able to ebb and flow, like not being upset when that person isn't able to do this or that, when it's like, okay, well, now they're married, now they've got kids, like they don't have like the time that they once had to be able to maybe dedicate that to you. But that's where it's okay to then maybe change some of those boundaries. Do you know what I mean? And it doesn't always have to be like this serious sit down conversation where it's like, this is where I'm crossing, like I'm building a line and you have to stay over there.
Yeah, like you sit over here, I'm over here.
Yeah.
You can't sit with me.
Right. And it's not that. It's more of just like understanding the mental change of, like, maybe your friend is at this different phase where their priorities have changed, or vice versa. You're that friend where those priorities have changed. And sometimes, like, you just have to understand, being like mentally like, okay, this is where they are. I'm going to still get to bond, still get to hang out with them, but it is changing and that's okay. But I also think if you're that person where you are in your 20s and you have maybe settled down, or now you are married and now you are thinking about having kids, that is very serious, and it's okay to then maybe tell some of your friends where it's like, oh, well, we were going out all the time. Like, it's okay to start telling those friends too, saying like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm actually going to stay at home. I want to spend more, like, or need could be true too, but like, I want to spend more quality time with my husband. We haven't gotten to see each other at all this week. And we're actually like starting to create new goals. And we're actually starting to think about a family. So it's like we are wanting to do research or read these books. And a lot of times your time commitment is going to change of where you're starting to put your energy. And some of your friends might not be there with you. And that's okay. If they're your friends, they're going to be so excited for you in this next phase, in this next chapter, and they're going to want to know about where you are. Yeah. So I think it's all about kind of surrounding yourself with those people, but also communicating what you need. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like those boundaries, like it can be a totally normal conversation, but it's also, like you said, it's being authentic to yourself, where we are also are, right? You said like dynamic, we're ever changing. So sometimes who we are, again, changes. You know what I mean? So it's okay just understanding that within yourself and being able to communicate that with your friends so they can go along the journey with you and be excited for you. But that way you're also setting up an environment where you feel supported by your friends and you're not like distancing yourself and they're kind of like, where did Tiffany go? Like,
yeah, exactly.
She just appeared, like she's not hanging out with us. She's only wants to hang out with her boyfriend or her whoever, like whatever's going on. Like, it's just being upfront about how those dynamics are changing. Because I think as we get into adult relationships, like, and you do find a more serious relationship, you are going to spend more time with that person, which is okay, which is normal. But it's, again, you have to then set those boundaries and communicate that with your friends. Otherwise, it can cause that friction where they're just like, well, where did she go? Like, I haven't seen them in forever. I don't know what's going on with them. Like, they seem really distant, and it might not be that's what's going on at all. It's just, you have to make sure that you're still carving out time for your friends, but also, committing it to like your family or maybe the more serious relationship that you're trying to get into. And so it's just understanding like those different types of relationships, how your relationships are ever changing, and just like keeping that open line of communication with your people and with your friends, you know?
Yeah. And communication, to your point, definitely is the key, like, especially with setting boundaries, because
Mhm.
a lot of the times people could be crossing your boundaries, but they don't even know that they're crossing them because you've never said
You never told
anything. And then it's just like
them.
you have, these expectations that are in your mind that
Mhm.
you've created this whole world, and they have no
Now you're
idea
pissed
that
at
they have
Jeremy
these
because he's the
rules.
loser. I'm just
Right.
kidding.
That you have all these rules that you expect people to follow,
Mhm.
but when you have expectations, you are setting yourself up for disappointment because people have their own life experiences. And like when we're all in our heads and not clearly communicating what it is that we want out of people and out of situations, then we're all just running around just with our own narratives. And then when people act in certain ways, we internalize that and we think to ourselves, oh, well, since they acted in this way, then that clearly means this, when they didn't have that intention and
Yeah.
don't even know what you're thinking. And then it's just like this mental warfare that either one of you don't even know what's happening. And y'all are just sitting up here confused. And then, yeah, it's just like, oh, like my friend switched up, da 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 da. But y'all haven't sat down and really talked about it. And I understand how that could be difficult because maybe
Yeah.
not everybody has the language to communicate boundaries respectfully. Maybe you grew up in an environment that the only form of communication that you really saw that you can associate to setting boundaries is an environment where people got really aggressive with each other or called each other out of their names and just like didn't have much respect or regard for one another. So, kind of to what you said earlier, like sometimes you can view setting boundaries as like this big conflict that will force you to be in an uncomfortable situation. And the truth is, learning how to communicate in and of itself is an uncomfortable thing, but one thing that really does help is just like fortifying that skill,
Mhm.
expanding your vocabulary. I am a big vocab buff. Like, I just like to
Mm.
pull words out of the arsenal. I like to use as many abstract words as possible because once you have an extensive vocabulary and you know what words to use in what context, it can communicate certain messages that maybe without that word you wouldn't have known how to
Mhm.
communicate. So just extending that vocabulary and also just kind of like learning language, like maybe learning how to use analogies, paint pictures, build a story, just to be more creative in communicating what you're communicating, but also really being able to do that in the most effective way possible that you see fit. And knowing your person as well, like once you know them well enough and know how to talk to them, just like finding a way to respectfully communicate with them is going to be really helpful in that process of setting boundaries and doing it respectfully. And, we're talking about setting boundaries with friends, which definitely can be a challenging thing. But I feel like for a lot of people in friendships, at the end of the day, if things don't work out and your friends don't respect your boundaries, it can be easier to just say, well, if you're not respecting these boundaries, then we got to part ways and it is what it is. However, I know it can be more challenging to do that with family members, and especially when you're younger and you're maybe financially dependent on your family, or even once you get out of the house and you're trying to make it out in the world on your own, but it's really tough and you just go to your family for your support. Even if you don't have boundaries established with your family members, and there could be aspects of your relationship that are pretty tumultuous, at the end of the day, that family dynamic is a sense of comfort for you. So it is so easy to always go back to that. And you want that sense of comfort, but also want to establish clear and firm boundaries with your family members. Um, so just with establishing boundaries with them, I would implore anyone to provide the same strategy or implement the same strategy in that situation with a friend. It's just respectfully communicating those boundaries, and just seeing how open they are. Like, if they are loving and open to those suggestions and want to work on a relationship with you, then both parties are going to do what they can to meet in the middle and cultivate a new relationship. Because when you're growing up with family, you have one type of relationship, but as you all mature, have your own individual life experiences, and gain different perspectives that inform you more of how to move throughout the world, you're going to change as people, and certain aspects of each of your personalities might clash. So, kind of learning how to adapt to one another and form a new relationship, and just like really garnering a respect for one another is something that, when placing boundaries, I feel like putting boundaries in place will help in that pursuit, because then it'll show them, oh, okay, like they really are someone who wants to be respected. And I feel like it can help them view you as an individual with autonomy, instead of just this little child who doesn't know anything. But it's like, okay, they actually have grown up, and they are more certain of themselves and being confident in who they are. So let me respect them. And hopefully that can, have a positive, lasting effect for you.
I love that you mentioned family, because I think when it comes to setting boundaries, obviously, like, I think in your 20s, 30s, like, relationships, like, your friendships are a big piece of identity. You know what I mean? But again, like we've always talked about, everything ties back to like our upbringing, our parents. And I think like everything you just said, right? As we get older, that dynamic changes. Like with your parents, your aunts, your cousins, whoever it is that like in your family you're closer with. And that's where sometimes it can get a little bit sticky, a little bit hairy with some of those relationships. Because as you get older, you then, of course, understand more. And sometimes you create your own opinions and your own mindset about certain things. And you realize that maybe the way that your family did things isn't how you want to do things moving forward, or even if it's I mean, I think since the election is today, that's really top
Yeah.
of mind. I know sometimes politics can be a really stressful like topic amongst some families. And I mean, a lot of families I know have very similar views across the board, but I also know some families can be pretty split. And I know that can create a lot of friction or uncomfortableness within my family and my dad's family on each side. We're pretty much like split across the board. There's people on really both sides of the spectrum. But I know in my extended family, this is something my parents really tried to shield me from. That actually created a lot of turmoil between like their siblings and their parents. And I know that's something my parents actively were like, we don't want to create that environment for like me and my family that way. So they were actively trying to do things to avoid that, which is, I'm pretty impressed by them
Mm-hmm.
having the emotional intelligence to do that in the day and age that they did.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say, I think I'm really privileged in the fact that I got to have that upbringing. But I also know being around some of those family members, like seeing the friction at like Thanksgiving or the holidays and things like that. And I'm kind of like, whoa,
You just melt in the
this,
chair, like,
yeah, I'm kind of like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. Because, like, there's always those people that are very steadfast in what they believe. And unfortunately, there's some people that are not always going to be open minded. And there's certain times when you're kind of like, all right, well, I know that this is not going to be productive. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I think it's fun to have a conversation about some of those things. But if it's, with certain people or certain personalities, it's going to turn into something that's more heated and more of an
yeah.
argument.
Because, like, you can't even have a conversation. It's
Yeah.
like when you think differently than them, then you're automatically wrong. And
Wrong
because
and dumb or
yeah,
whatever.
because they believe that what they feel is right, they have that sense of righteousness, which is attached to virtue and like
Hmm.
their standing as a person. So it's very easy to view what's right as this good thing and then what's wrong, quote unquote, as this
Exactly.
bad thing. So there's no room to have a productive
Yeah.
conversation
It's just
because
not worth
it's
it.
just like, oh, if you disagree with me, then what does that say about me as a person? And then
Yeah.
they get defensive,
And you're
which
like,
can
I'm not trying to get
just
into
lead
that.
to that argument. And yeah, it's unfortunate that that kind of conditioning really just makes it incapable of
Hmm.
having a conversation.
Yeah. Which again, I think that's probably something that I think probably multiple people can relate to that sentiment. But I do think that's where like boundaries, but also like continuing to be authentic to yourself are like, I mean, the key here is really like that baseline. Cause I think it's okay to stand up for yourself. Like, you, like, in my mind, like, you don't want that person to like kind of walk all over you or just to then what go with the flow because it's easier and there's no friction. Because then you're not being authentic to you. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to drain you at the end of the day. Like, I know when I was younger, like, I would just go along with it and I wouldn't try to create any friction. I would just kind of like almost agree with them, but like really not agree, but I would just
Just say yes so they can stop talking.
essentially that's what it
Yeah.
was. Like, I definitely did that when I was like a teenager and
Yeah,
through
I've done it too a
and
lot of
I think,
times in my
I mean,
life.
everyone's done it,
Yeah.
right? But it's like I noticed like by the time I would leave whatever the family gathering, the whatever's going on, I would be so drained. Like, it would be just such an energy suck that I was like, that was freaking exhausting having to like just people please and try to be go with the flow and try to be easy for those family members. And what I found was I was like, why am I bending over backwards to make somebody else feel comfortable? That is a crazy thing to
And they
do
do not
when
give
they're,
a flipping flying about your
yeah,
comfortability.
when they're
They're
not
just
doing
like
it.
so boisterous and outward with their opinion. And it's just like, I'm just supposed to sit here and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Don't even care about you. But then you got to
100%.
sit up here and
Yeah,
please them just so
right.
that they can feel comfortable.
Right. And so I think that's where then you can try to have as best you can productive like conversation. And again, it doesn't have to be like confrontational where you're going to be like, well, I disagree because I think you're, it doesn't have to be something really heated and really charged. It can just be a simple sentence of like, hey, you know what? I know you feel really strongly and I love that you're really passionate. I honestly just don't want to get into the topic just because I would say I do think a little bit differently and I don't want to have us argue. I want us to be able to get along and enjoy things. And you know what? I think it's best if we maybe can change the subject. And I think if you say something nicely, but still standing up for yourself of like, I'm going to be honest, I feel differently. My view is different. However, I don't want, like I'm saying, I don't want to like cause friction. I don't want to get you upset. I don't want to rile anybody up. Like, I'd rather kind of just move on and change the topic. That way you're at least not people pleasing. You're not lying to that person or being inauthentic to you of being like, yeah, sure. And that's not actually how you feel. Cause at the end of the day, that's just going to make you feel icky. So I will say with some of my family, I've just been like, you know what? Like, I love that you're so passionate. I'm going to be honest. I really just don't want to dive into that. I don't want to really talk about politics. I don't want to get into some of those. And again, with my family, it's mostly been politics. For you guys, it might be different topics of how you raise your family, right? It can be anything under the sun. But I think it's okay to just be like, you know what? I really just don't want to dive into that today. Like, I want us to just to like have fun. Like, we can talk about there's a million other things that we can talk about.
There's a lot you could talk
And
about in
so,
life.
yeah, so I think it's sometimes setting boundaries, I think with family, that can be, like Garrett was saying, just uncomfortable. Because again, they've seen you from being itty bitty and now growing up, you have your own opinions. They might look at you being like, why are you talking to me? Because,
Like,
like,
you have the the
right.
audacity of you to grow up and have your own mind,
Yeah.
not just let me walk all over you.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So it is just different. And that's a big piece of like growing up and having that dynamic change. But that's where it's so important to stand up for yourself, because then you'll also walk away from the end of the day, walk away from that encounter, not feeling like you're drained. And I know for me, like that's been so powerful just to be like, hey, you know what? Like, I just really don't want to get into politics. I think we're going to have different viewpoints, and I don't want to like argue. And it's like, if you look at one of your family members and saying like, I really don't want to argue today. Like, I want to like have fun and enjoy our time together because I love you. If they're still trying to then really push it, they're just being a dick, like there's really no sugarcoating it. Because if you are then saying like, hey, I love you, like we have differing viewpoints, I don't think we need to like unpack all of that right now. If you know it's going to get heated, if it can be a healthy conversation, I think that stuff is awesome. Like, I think if you have family that is really open-minded, where it can be a conversation of like, I want to understand why you think that way and why you've built the viewpoint. Because again, their opinion was based on something. It wasn't just like, phew, I'm going to pick that today. Like, they have their opinion for a reason, and you have yours for your own reason. So it's really being able to like also navigate the situation of like, okay, I want to have just a grown-up adult conversation with you. And I think with some family members, like I can have like with my mom, like we have differing viewpoints about certain things, and my mom is very level-headed, as you guys have probably pieced together. Like, we can have a normal conversation about it where she's not going to be like, well, you're dumb for thinking that. But I also have other family where it's the other end, where I'm like, we're not going to have a productive conversation.
Right. It's just like, thank you,
yeah,
next.
Yeah, we're like, let's just move on from that topic.
Yeah.
So it's just being able to differentiate. And like, if you can have a cool conversation, heck yeah. Like, that can be really stimulating conversation. But also then being able to set boundaries maybe with certain family members where it's not going to serve you and you're just going to feel drained. This being like, you know what? Let's let it lie here.
Yeah.
Let's move
like,
on.
You're like, let's let it rest.
Right.
And one thing that I really want to touch on that you mentioned, that I feel like can be a very tough situation for people to navigate, but can also be very empowering if you can find it in you to move through it, is navigating those situations where maybe your family members just are completely unreceptive to your boundaries and continue to want to push things on you and just move into the territory of disrespect, and you have no option but to put your foot down in those situations, whether that be just really kind of pushing back a little bit harder or just having to walk away from the situation. And depending on how extreme it is, like maybe even like walk away from them in life for a point in time, just so you both can figure things out respectively. Having the strength to be disliked is something that is really powerful, even though it is extremely uncomfortable, and it literally is on the polar opposite end of that people-pleasing spectrum, where it's just like, ooh, like I want everyone to like me, and you're doing everything to be liked, to then go on the completely separate end and be like, you know what, I'm going to stand my ground, and even if people don't like that, to be okay with that, but I'm not going to sacrifice my mental health and my peace and just my sense of worth as a person in order to please this individual or to like make this situation copacetic. I am going to just respectfully walk away and continue my self-discovery journey. That can be extremely uncomfortable to go through, and your body is going to experience a lot of pain. Like, there's going to be a lot of physical pain,
right?
Just like being tense, stressed out, like you might freeze up in certain situations.
Oh my God, 100%.
It could be very anxiety inducing, and then also like a lot of mental and emotional pain as well. However, it's important to remember that sometimes when your mind, body, and spirit go through pain, it is not meant to hinder you or to weaken you, but it actually is a part of that healing process, because your body experiences discomfort for a reason. It is meant to regulate you and put you back at that baseline, because it's a signal to you, letting you know like, okay, like something is wrong here and I'm responding in this way in order to help you out and heal you. And rolling with the punches and being able to let yourself go through the process and to just sit with it, you can then be like, okay, I'm getting more in tune with this feeling. So, what measures can I take in order to bandage this wound and to just like cater towards this uncomfortable feeling and just work with it? And then as you work with it, you come to a place where you can heal and move forward in life. And then you can come on the opposite end of that stronger than you were before going through that situation. And as unfortunate as it really is serving because it turns you into a more powerful individual. And then if you ever reconvene one day, you can really allow that person to see you, and they really like had no option but to see you because you made it known, I'm not going to be disrespected and I'm not going to have my livelihood put in jeopardy just so that way you can continue being in your ways. Because also, like, people pleasing is a form of enabling. When you just sit back and kind of let people do whatever they see fit, you are keeping them in those patterns that, while it is comfortable for them, it's not really allowing them to see the damage that they're doing to you and to other people around them. And you standing your ground can be the catalyst for them to see how their actions affect people and really force them to look into the mirror and then do that shadow work. And by people pleasing, you're depriving them of that opportunity. So although it's an uncomfortable experience for them, well, you were uncomfortable people pleasing. So it's either they're uncomfortable or you're going to be uncomfortable. And we all are going to have to exchange that energy of uncomfortability. You know, what you put out comes back to you. So it's really just that energy exchange of them receiving back what it is that they put out. And once they kind of realize, oh, my actions clearly have repercussions, let me reflect and think more. It might not change anything, but it also could. If it does and you are able to reconvene, it is going to change things for the better. So in the long run, even though it is more difficult, it really can lead to you and that person having a healthier relationship, and you're just going to have a healthier, more free and expansive life when you decide to do that.
That was beautiful. I loved so many things that you said there, but the one I really want to repeat. You're like, I wish I could say exactly how you said it, but you're like, get comfortable, like, being disliked.
Yeah.
Because that, I mean, if you're a chronic people pleaser, that, like you said, hurts.
Yeah.
You know what I
It's
mean?
like a dagger.
It's like a, what? Someone's going to dislike me for just my opinion, which unfortunately sometimes that is what it is. And I mean, I think that's dumb, obviously, but sometimes but like you said, if you're showing up for yourself, you're creating that space to like demand respect in a way, in a good way. You know what I mean? Where you're like, I'm not going to waver on who I am to make someone else more comfortable because they're not going to do that for you. Do you know what I mean? So everything you said, I think, was so powerful because I think just hearing being like, someone's going to dislike me, like, that doesn't feel good. We're human. Like, it's part of our nature to want to be liked and to get validation, right? Which is a normal response. But then that's where it's so important to surround yourself with like your people, or even if it's, and I always say, like, when it's your people, it doesn't have to be the people that think exactly like you. Like we said, not everyone is going to check off every single box, but just having maybe people that are open-minded. Like, I definitely have friends that have different political views than me. And I keep talking about politics. Sorry, I'm just really thinking about the election. But like, I've had friends that, like, again, we don't agree on everything. We have different mindsets, but I have been fortunate to find people and be surrounded with people that will respect my opinion, of like, we can have an open dialogue of like, this is so important to me because I feel this way about this from certain experiences, yada, yada. And they're kind of like, oh, that makes sense. And I'm not telling people that to change their mind. I'm just saying, like, this is where I'm coming from. And that's why it's important for me. Like, my values are going to be placed in certain areas. Other people's values are going to be different, and they're going to be have more emphasis on certain things here. So that's where there's going to be a difference, you know, in how we feel. So I think it's just everything you just said was just really beautiful. I just loved it all.
Yay.
So good.
Well, this was a really good discussion that we have. I feel like
Honestly,
hopefully
yeah,
you all got a lot of
I
value
really
out of
loved
it.
it. So I hope they loved it just
Yeah. And like I just love being able to bounce ideas off of you and like hear your perspective
Same.
and share my
Same.
perspective. Like I just always feel energized after we have these conversations. Just like I'm
100%.
ready to just go out and live my most free,
Yeah.
expansive life. And I just love that for me.
I always just get a little nugget where I'm like, oh, I love what he said there. Like, because I think sometimes we, like, at least in this space, like, I always listen to stuff that's similar to this. And it's like, sometimes we can always hear something, but sometimes the way someone says it, just somehow, you know, just like
Yeah.
you hear something and you're just like, oh, that hit.
Ooh,
like,
yeah.
that really landed for me. And sometimes, like, you hear something multiple times, but for some day where you are at that time energetically, sometimes it will really just land and really hit with you. So hopefully there was something that we could talk about today with you guys where you were like, oh, I really feel that. Like, I really understand that. And that really like resonated with me where I am today. Or you could really like relate to something or feel like you could have a little nugget that you got to take home, and then you can think about starting to implement and just starting that process of building that respect for yourself, setting up those boundaries, whether it's with your friends, with your family. And again, not being as like daunted or scary of like, oh, I have to have a sit down conversation and really be confrontational, where it can be just more of like creating that open dialogue, creating that open conversation where you are communicating what you need and why it's important, but not being like, well, you did this. It's like well, this is what I need. This is so important to me there.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yay.
Well, happy Tuesday, people.
Yes, happy Tuesday. Hopefully y'all all got what we got out of this, because it hit for
Yeah,
me.
same
So
here.
yeah, we are going to be back next week. Every Tuesday we are here. So catch us here.
Love
We're going to
it.
be talking about just various things regarding mental health, conscious living, mindfulness, building that emotional intelligence, and navigating our 20s and doing so authentically and optimistically. So if you liked this, please, please, please make sure that if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and share this video, okay?
Come
because
on,
we want to
send it
reach
to
as
your-
many
send
of
it to your
y'all
people.
as possible. And we just love building this community. And we also love hearing insight on how you feel about certain topics, and also like gaining new perspective from you guys. So if you feel like you want to add to the conversation and give us your unique perspectives, please do so. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure that you rate us 5 stars. And yeah, we will see you all next week. And we love you all very, very much.
Love you. Bye.